the best villains of all time. Would you say Shredder or Super Shredder? Because there's two different versions.
That's true. That's true.
Von Doom, Yep, Doom. It's coming up now. Whoa, ho, ho, ho. It's a guy with a metal face. Yeah, I'd advise against hiring him.
I think the best villain in Walking Dead is the writers.
The Shadow Crew Podcast.
I love talking about the villains, man. It's one of my favorite topics.
Always is, man. And of course, as always, who's number one, who's number two. But, and I like to think that they're all badasses all across the board, man. It always cracks me up whenever I look at the list. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's some good ones here, man. There's some good ones.
Yeah. I think, I guess when you talk about villains, it's, hey everyone. We're talking about the best of villains. Welcome to the Shadow Crew podcast on the Shadow Knows Network. Thanks for tuning in, and we're excited to have you listen. But yeah, we just we forgot we were recording, so welcome in. We often do that, but we're talking about a best of series. Every episode we have a best of. It's really stuff that we talk about offline. We just thought we'd bring it to the air, and we were talking about the best villains of all time. And I guess are we saying the best villain as it relates to villains that appear across the board, like have made appearance in comic books and movies, or are we talking about someone who has played a villain? I think we should be very specific, right? Because Dr. Brantley was, we were talking about, Darth Vader and Joker and the variety of people that have played Joker. Like, would we say, well, it's Jack Nicholson's Joker, or do we say Joker as a whole?
I think it's just the character.
I think it's just the character as well. Yeah. So if you character,
you take the good and you take the bad with that.
You do.
Okay.
You do.
And if you've managed to do it like Star Wars, keep the same voice and a consistent, characterization across almost 50 years now, you're doing pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's going to be hard to say Dr. Doom then. Because if we're just talking about the
Julian McMahon's
version,
Dr. Doom.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal on screen, I got to be honest with you. So if we're talking about comic books specifically, I mean, Cobra Commander...
Oh yeah,
on screen, it's a little
terrible.
tough for me.
Yeah,
but obviously in the cartoons and in all the lore that is G.I. Joe. All right, well, let's jump into it.
All right,
that would be one I would say. I'm sorry, Mr. Storm, to steal your thunder because you're such a G.I. Joe fan, but I'm a huge Cobra Commander fan.
Oh yeah,
Chet's not on this cast. He had again. NDAs. He's working on big things, big projects. Chat purchasing a helicopter, Airwolf, bat cycle, whatever the hell he's doing. But I'm excited to have him back on the show next week. But I think Cobra Commander for sure stands out to me, is an iconic one. And Chet and I were talking about Call of Duty had an opportunity to bring in G.I. Joe.
Yes.
Like imagine Cobra versus Joe and like a battle royale and video games, and I don't know, it's never happened, but I'm gonna say Cobra Commander for sure is one of those top villains.
Well, first of all, that's a fantastic idea, Hasbro, for a video game. Is you essentially have it all built already with these other games that fight each other, but you just do the skins of G.I. Joe and Cobra.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, since Cobra Commander was taken, and I guess there's always a controversy with it. Is it with the actual hood mask, or with it's just a silver faceplate? And I'm like, I don't see the big difference of it. I understand the ideology a little bit behind it, but it's still, if you want someone to hate the character, then that's probably the best way to hate him, to be honest with you. So, hooded or faceplate, fine with me, man.
Do you take his seriously with his voice?
Well, his voice has only been done in the cartoon, but in the comic book.
Wait, what about Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
Well,
he turned into Cobra Commander at the end of the movie.
yeah, yeah. We
Well, you know what?
won't.
Isn't it the same thing with Skeletor? Like the
Yeah.
voice as well. Well, I think it
I'm
just
gonna
is.
get you.
Yeah, it's kind of iconic. Like it won't translate well on the big screen. If you did GI Joe right, you probably couldn't replicate the voice that
No.
much.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool. I've always wanted. There's a statue, collectible statue that I've always wanted to purchase. Just too much money. I think it's from Sideshow Collectibles.
It probably
It's
is too much money to size
Cobra
show.
Commander in the hood, sitting in
Hmm.
his throne.
I've
That
seen
is
it.
a cool piece. I
Mhm.
like the hooded
Yes.
Cobra Commander better, but
Hmm.
I'll take it either way.
Exactly. If I'm gonna go with a villain, I thought this is the most classic villain on the basically silver screen, and he has some of the most, I guess, quotable lines. I'm gonna give you Khan from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. He was a heck of a villain.
Yeah,
The
that's
best
a good.
Star Trek ever produced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great one.
Now, do you think because of him?
Oh, record a multiple. Oh, absolutely.
That's what, like sometimes a guy just makes the
Yes.
movie, right?
Yes.
But also, the way they wrote him was Captain Ahab. So
Exactly.
you've got all of that great dialogue, and then they just switched out a couple of things
Mhm.
for space terms, and it could have been ridiculous from any other actor, but Khan made you believe it.
Oh yeah, definitely Ricardo Montalban. Great guy. I'm thinking that since Chet's not here, I'm gonna give one of his guys, because I know he would be screaming and hollering if we didn't do it. The Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Is there
Yes.
not a badass villain that is basically your one and only good villain, compared to all the other mutants and everything else? Shredder's the main man, bro.
They could solve the city's rat problem.
Including my problem with a rat named Splinter.
Would you say Shredder or Super Shredder? Because there's two different versions.
That's true. That's true. Well, I guess we can throw it in the same category.
And he's another one with the voice that,
does.
it's like, it's like, I don't think I can take you very seriously.
And you know who his voice was in the 80s, right? It was James Avery, the Uncle Phil from the
Oh wow,
Bel Air.
I
Yes,
didn't know that. I didn't know
yes, it
that.
is.
Well, I got to say Thanos.
Yes,
Obviously,
yes.
comics and movies. I think
Mhm.
Josh Brolin did a great job making that character mean.
Mhm.
It's probably one of those iconic characters, and I go back to. We may have covered this on the original couple of podcasts. But I always have this like Darth Vader is one character
Mhm.
where you feel for them, like there's like an element of like good because you know their story, but then they're so
Mhm.
evil. And like Thanos to me is kind of there's like a little empathy there for that character a bit.
Mhm.
Like you kind of like him at certain times, and most of the time you don't. But like those two are very comparable. I thought Josh Brolin did a really good job
He did.
on screen, and then obviously the books. I mean,
And you got to thank the great Jim Starlin for that, because that is probably one of the there's probably like 3 or 4 main Marvel villains, and Thanos is like really one of the upper echelons
mhm.
of them. So you got to give credit to that. I would say also, if we're going to go with the comic book guys, Magneto from the X-Men. He is another character that made you feel a little empathetic for as well.
Yeah.
His cause is real, and yet he's so brutal with it that you can't get on board with it.
Yeah.
That's the
100
one thing I loved about the X-Men comic books, is that they had two opposing philosophies, and they had Magneto and Professor X on each side. And there were times when either one was right and either one was wrong. And you're like, this is just a different way to come about the problem,
Mhm.
Sometimes Magneto was a little too brutal, sure. But, it's what you got to do. It's what you got to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Brent Laney.
Oh, yeah. Well, besides Darth Vader, obviously, who's number one, and
Mhm.
there's no one we're gonna come up with that's gonna beat him.
Obi-Wan has taught you well.
But I got a list. I got to help out some people here. Voldemort
Yeah.
Oh,
from Harry Potter, and I started watching the movies. I wasn't in, because I didn't read the books because I was a little too old for that. But when the first couple movies came out, I was like, oh, right, this is okay. But after the third movie, I was like, actually, this is getting pretty good. I had to go back and read that, and started reading the books too. Very good villain, classic.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
no,
Yeah.
see, we're going with classic villains from literature that's made its way on the screen. You got to say Professor James Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. He is the
Yes.
mastermind of crime. You got to give it to that. An adversary to the smartest man on the planet. You got to be a pretty good villain for that one, man.
Yeah, your job is to outsmart the smartest guy on the planet.
Mhm.
Impressive.
Let's see. Also, if you're looking at again another superhero character, Lex Luthor, man with no
Oh
powers,
yeah.
yet
Yeah.
opposes the last son of Krypton. And
No
he is.
power and no hair.
And actually, if you think about something, he's the precursor to what it is right now, where they're Seagal and Schuster in their 30s came up with it, but a billionaire who is trying to take over world domination.
Yeah. It's Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos's body.
All together, all together. Let's go. I'm surprised Dr. Brentley did it. The Alien Queen. I gotta say it's an absolute villain to me. It
Yeah.
wants to destroy the
Yep.
entire universe.
She may
Yeah.
yet be of some
Well,
use to us.
I think we're talking about a lot of comic book stuff. Hans Gruber from Die Hard.
Oh yes, yes.
Come on. Like
Mhm.
such an iconic.
Mm-hmm.
And to be in only one film and give you that performance where he was still the best
Yeah.
villain out of one film. That is, he set the mark and no one else has made it yet.
The Force is with him.
Yeah, I can't think like an action movie. He's up there.
Yeah, he
Just
really
like
is.
iconic. I
Mhm.
mean, that movie's iconic too, but
Mhm.
he
Yeah,
was really good.
But
most
how
of the
many
villains.
other action movies
Mhm.
are the villain is like, oh, we're still talking about them today.
Exactly.
You know, the
Mhm.
Predator.
It's true.
Mhm.
That's
Yep.
one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Although, if you
Uh,
ask the Predator, it'd be Arnold Schwarzenegger be the villain. But
I was just hunting, minding my own business, and these a-holes got in the way.
So you telling me that Wesley Snipes in Demolition Man is not the caliber like Hans Gruber is?
no,
Oh, come on, man.
no, he tried
Give
to
Wesley
be.
Snipes some love.
Hey, Wesley Snipes with blonde hair didn't work.
He's as clumsy as he is stupid.
They should have learned right off the bat when they did a test screening.
You know what? And
Not going to take it seriously.
even in the comic book, I thought he was a good character, but once I saw him on the screen, he was done right, and they keep continuing to do him right. Is the Kingpin when he made that leap into the Daredevil series, and then he jumped over to the Punisher? Like, wow, like I know we're going to talk about the Echo trailer later on, but the Kingpin is up there, man.
Yep. Well, Lord of the Rings had a ton.
Oh,
I mean, throughout the series and the books, so you could kind of narrow it down. Saruman, the Witch King, Wormtongue. You could go on and on, but I think if I'm going to narrow down one particular, like Saruman was a cool character, like the transition from good to evil.
mhm.
Plus, he's awesome. Like Dooku, and then you go around and turn in a Saruman performance, man. Two iconic movies. That's pretty badass. So much love, because I think he recently passed away. I think the actor Christopher
Christopher Lee.
Yeah, right. Was it this year or last year? I think it was pretty recent. I think, but I don't know. But I would say Lord of the Rings for sure. All of those iconic evil villains throughout the series.
Well, again, I wrote down a list because I knew Chet wasn't going to be on tonight, so I was like, I got to throw in it because, again, he'll be screaming at the screen. But I know he's going to say Megatron from Transformers.
Yep.
If there's a villain that's equal to the hero, It's
And
Megatron.
again, another one with the voice that is so ridiculous I can't take him seriously. Ah, the Transformers. It's like,
We are victorious! Is there anyone in the universe who'll challenge the might of Megatron?
How about this one? I was thinking about. There's, one of my favorite films, but I was like, who truly was the villain? And I thought RoboCop. It has to be OCP, the corporation.
Well, are you saying then you
it's
saying
not
Skynet too is a villain? Like
Skynet
just
is a villain, but the Terminator definitely goes in there. But Skynet is the progressor.
T-1000 is the
Hmm.
best villain out of all of those.
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. How about the Red Skull? Though we only saw him in the one Captain America movie,
he
but
was good.
through the
In
I
comic.
love that.
in
Mhm.
I
the
loved him in the movie.
comics, he
Oh,
is good.
yes.
In the movies, they did not do him right.
They didn't capture it right, but I
It
still
was still
thought it was a good
cool. I thought they,
performance. Yes.
yeah, it was still good.
Yeah,
Like,
but it wasn't, because I remember reading the Captain America comics, and he was a great villain at doing all sorts of stuff, and just don't think they fully got him down what he could have been.
Well, they did have Hugo Weaving, so it wasn't like they were asking for Academy Award winning
Well,
actor or something. It's
hey,
like
well, speaking of that, Agent Smith, that's a
yes.
great
yeah.
Now
villain.
that's his great. That's when he's. That's actually Hugo Weaving. He's played that in all the films he's been afterwards.
Yeah.
Hugo Weaving he's on his own, just as villain Hugo.
Yes. One of my favorites, and he's only been in one film, but he was in the comic book series, Deacon Frost from Blade. I just thought,
Yeah.
that was a great villain and a great nemesis to Blade.
Well,
Mhm.
the villain in one of the best trilogies of all time, little boy from Hill Valley, California, Biff Tannen.
Yes.
He's a
Yes.
nemesis in the Old West, and he's still a bad guy, his grandson in the future.
And see, I'm gonna since we're talking about California and everything, I thought, well, we got to go with one of the worst villains that I think I've seen because I know this is a real villain and shit. Corporal Kai out of the valley.
Mm. Yes. 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 Well, that's what it. Well, Cobra Kai, and then like Johnny Lawrence was such an iconic '80s bad guy.
Yeah, but
Then they did the
that
new
dojo.
series. That yeah.
But
Oh
Sensei
yeah.
Kreese, he's the real
Yes.
bad guy, or
Exactly.
Terry Silver.
The
Mhm.
ponytail. Yeah. The Steven Seagal look-alike. Yeah.
How about Drago from Rocky? I
Yeah.
think Rocky Four.
For
They had
He
the whole
dies.
nation,
He
the whole
dies.
the whole
Yeah.
nation behind him.
Yeah. Now here's one. I think the most hated on-screen villain, and that is Hans Landa from Inglorious Bastards,
Mm,
the Nazi
mm.
general or whatever. Christoph Waltz. I
Amazing
think
actor.
hit that performance. You hated him.
Mhm.
Like some of these villains we were talking about, they're cool, they're interesting, but on screen, man, you just wanted to see him get killed. So that is a villain, man.
Mhm.
Quentin Tarantino does a pretty damn good job of creating some villains.
He
I
does.
do have to say.
Although he can strain a line because as I was writing my list, I was like, well, is Marcellus Wallace really a villain? Because of what happened at the end, he became the
No,
victim.
no. Now I know that somebody might argue this because he had typically is been associated with not the greatest of the Avengers movies, but I do like Ultron, and I think his voice is pretty badass. Like I
Mm.
thought that was one of the coolest bad guy voices.
I think it's
Was
James
it
Spader.
James Spader?
Hmm.
I know they didn't do that that movie right
No,
specifically, but
no.
Ultron is a cool character, like in the books, and then
Hmm.
it wasn't bad on screen.
No. You're right and everything. I'm a huge fan, and actually, I wanted to mention this because I know this simulcast will be a couple of days after, but today is Godzilla Day, and his biggest foe
Ah,
is Monster X or Ghidorah. That's what that
mm,
is. If there's ever a yin to yang, it's a three-headed flying demon.
okay, I got to throw this out there. Violator, the clown
Mhm.
from Spawn.
Mhm.
Although John Leguizamo's performance, we have to kind of
Yeah.
that's but in the books.
In the book, he's always the nemesis.
Yes.
That and the
And a good
Malebolgia.
one, too. And Malbosia, yep, for sure.
Absolutely.
HAL 9000, the
Oh.
beginning of the evil AI.
Mhm.
You know, even back in 1968, Stanley Kubrick was like, "Hey, this isn't going to work out well with the computers."
Yeah, he set the bar for all evil computers. Just his voice alone, when it comes on, it's not menacing, but it's so calm that it makes you worry.
Mhm. I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave.
How about the Green Goblin from Spider-Man? If there's ever a Joker to Batman, it's got to be Spider-Man and the Green Goblin.
Totally.
You know,
totally. And that was done all right on the big screen
yes,
too.
yes.
I liked Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe is a great villain.
Have you ever seen the original mask setup they had for that? Sam Raimi's initial vision. If you go on YouTube and you search like what they had it designed for, it is the creepiest freaking thing ever. And Sam Raimi was like, this is gonna scare the shit out of kids. Like we need to make it, and then what it was in the movie. But just search that, man. It's like if they wanted to make like a darker version of Spider-Man.
Yeah, it was a horror.
Yes. I mean, Sam Raimi would be the guy to do it too. I mean, if you're gonna go the horror route,
you're gonna go classic Sam Raimi, yeah. But he knew it was probably more of a mainstream audience, so he was trying to give it the best shot he could.
Would you say Venom?
Yeah, it depends on
is he? I mean,
what section.
He's been a villain, and like.
Well, it's like him and Loki. Like they were good and bad, and they switch them, but they were in their heart and essence, they're still villains. I say the Borg. As a whole species is badasses.
Don't act so surprised.
Yep.
Let's see. What about? Let's go. The classic villain that scared people in the middle of the night through the Victorian era, Count Dracula. And during the 80s, I think it was Count Chocula that scared the hell out of you after you ate a bowl of it.
I was much more scared of Frankenberry because what kind of a berry is it? Don't know.
We had to do the best series
together.
We had to do a best series of the best morning cereals from General Mills. That'll take up a whole episode.
What about Negan from The Walking Dead?
Oh yes,
books
yes.
and
The Walking Dead had like 3 or 4 really good villains, and then it kind of became the same kind of villain. But you got to think of like the Governor. Jeez,
yep. I think the best villain in Walking Dead is the writers. I stopped watching. It was so bad or scary.
Mm-hmm. Other than that, like I said again, man, this is one of those topics we could just kill ourselves all night on and everything. But I think we're all in agreement that Darth Vader is the supreme of supremes, right?
What do you mean?
What about King Joffrey from Game of Thrones? Talk about a hated character.
Yes.
Let me tell you. I remember
you really wanted to see that dude get strangled.
Well, it took till the 5th season, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
which was so great when the writing was so good, and they stayed pretty true to the books.
Yeah.
Every season, you're like, this little fucker's still alive. How is that possible?
Yeah, they've killed everybody else, but this little bastard.
I remember I was not into Game of Thrones, and Dr. Brenton was like, no, you got to see it. And I was like, I don't know, man. And so I watched the first episode. I wasn't too impressed with it. He's like, no, keep going. And there was a certain point as I was watching, like, when are they going to kill this kid, man? For God's sake, and everything. Like week after week. And finally when he did, it's like, oh, thank God. It's like, and then you had to think about.
I've never wanted a child to be murdered so much in my life.
Like you just woke up the next day, like, what's wrong with me?
I was reading some of the research prior to our podcast. I was reading some articles of the top TV villains of all time, different periodicals, and the Rolling Stone had one, and it had Jeffrey Baratheon and all these. You know who they had number 1? Benjamin Linus from Lost. Okay, and I was like, I hadn't heard that name in a long time. But then I reflected back, other than the shitty ending to that series, he was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
He was really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say J.R. Ewing from Dallas because
he was on that list.
Oh my God,
he was on that list.
There's no one else has been worse than this guy. Yes, absolutely, man.
So
Great
yeah, I
villains,
think
brother.
I mean there's so many, but I guess
Hmm.
we could go on and on. But speaking of bad guys, I think we should talk about what this the Marvel catastrophe that's happening right
Hmm.
now. And the
Yes,
first
sir.
thing that we read, we were all texting each other this week that Marvel's thinking about scrapping the whole Kang universe and making Doctor Doom the villain. I don't know. It's just so funny to me that they're just like, let's just bring back the old Avengers and throw Doctor Doom in. Like, it's just like, it's almost like shit you would just make up. But like, what are your all thoughts? Because it's just, is it that bad where it's not fixable? That like,
They're desperate. That's what it is.
Hmm.
They're running scared.
yeah,
They realize that like probably the next 2 to 3 things that they're gonna put out are not going to make money. And they have to keep spending money on these things to make them presentable. And they're like, okay, well, we need to fix this. What are we going to do? Well, we killed off our favorite characters. Well, let's bring them back.
Hmm.
Okay, throw money at that problem. And oh, we've got a troublesome actor that is going to be our main villain, just like we set up Thanos in the first part. So what do we do now? Well, we're throwing money at the problem, get a new villain, and make sure that he's got a very good background check.
Hmm. Well, here's the thing:
they
when
they run they run
yeah,
they run an extensive background check on the next
yeah.
Doctor Doom.
Von Doom, uh-huh. Yep, Doom. It's coming up now. Whoa, ho, ho, ho. It's a guy with a metal face. Yeah, I'd advise against hiring him.
Like
We just want to let you
background.com.
all know he's cleared,
You
no
bet.
criminal history. He's a good guy.
Uh,
He's a good guy.
first of all, Jonathan Majors hasn't been convicted of anything at the moment, and whatever is going on, it still has to play itself out in court, and that's probably going to take possibly a year.
And it all does
Depends.
seem a little fishy too.
Well,
So
it's the thing of it is that just because you're taking heat as a studio, you bring it down on the situation. Now, Ezra Miller was completely a different thing for DC, and that was a problem that just kept reoccurring. But so far, Majors has the one incident, and that's kind of been it, and we don't even know clearly from it.
But
So
do you
I
think But do you think they're using it because they
Yes.
know like Kang is not working? Like it's too confusing for the mass audience.
Well,
This whole like he's not resonating with people on screen.
you
Like
introduce
you
Kang in a
introduce him
TV
Loki,
show.
right? The first series, yeah, you're
Yeah.
like okay, the first season, and then the movie, the whole Ant Man was just a disaster.
Hmm.
And so after that, people are like, I'm not interested. I wonder if they're using that as an excuse of
They
just
are.
reboot. Like
Well,
he's
the
not the guy.
the one major thing is, again, they launched a character on a TV show, and it was a paid subscription service. Now when you launch someone on the film, you're telling them that they're epic. You launch them on a small screen and move them to a big screen. There's an afterthought. So it's not like we saw like Thanos show up on any of the smaller Disney Plus shows. You can't do a villain like that. Second of all, is you can't understand the villain because he's so many different variables of the same villain. And it's not like, Thanos is a bad guy, and we absolutely know what he is. His motivation's clear. I have yet to know what Kang's motivation is through I guess, the 2 years of Loki and the actual Ant Man. And I think Ant Man and Quantum Mania really did hurt Kang in a worse way than they've ever done before.
yeah,
So, it's just, and them wanting to reboot with all the characters. Look, we've been saying this for a while. If you had Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, they wanted to leave. They thought they were being too identified with the characters. Fine. That does not mean that you don't replace them as characters. You get another Captain America. Get another. You had the greatest, I guess, reboot with the snap of a finger. You could just replace the characters, but no, you thought that the franchise was bigger than the characters. And unfortunately, now we're starting to find out that the characters are bigger than the Marvel name. That's the problem when you build characters so strong. Spider Man's bigger than Marvel, like Captain America, all these characters. So now what they're going to have to do is, yeah, they need to do a reboot, a soft reboot, bring your main core characters back. I don't know, come up with something. You had the multiverse could have explained all that crap, you know? How it's just Tony Stark back and every other situation. You could have explained it all. You could have had Doctor Strange go into place and pull them all back. It just would have been a 5 minute thing on the screen. But again, this is what happens, I believe, when you have an ego and you're like, again, the successful people are the hardest people to make change. Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios had a blistering amount of success, and now it's taking a slow burn to do that because people look. He said, "Well, I can take any Marvel character and put them to the screen, and they're going to do well." No, there's the secondary characters. You can't just Iron Man every other bad secondary character, and now their bottom line is suffering behind that.
And they
Yeah,
didn't
it's
want, what, Iron Heart?
No, nobody wanted
It's
that character.
like, yeah, and the way that they've introduced these secondary characters has not worked out the way they did the first wave of characters, because they built them in these iconic movies doing iconic things, and now these characters come in sort of like with a joke or two, and hey, better love me because I'm going to be in the next 3 or 4 things.
Yeah, that's killing the audience. I think it's just like, it again, there's always an arrogance that goes down with executives. They got too comfortable. They did things in a certain way, and you constantly in business you have to constantly change and evolve. And if you're unwilling to do that, well, the bottom line starts suffering, and that's what's happening right now. The same way when we were reading in that same article from Variety about the mess of the Blade script and how they had 3 other characters, and Blade was like the 4th lead character in his own film. Now you got an Academy Award winning actor in Ali, and you relegate him to a like 4th billing. And only time the reason why they changed the script and everything because he said he was going to walk off the picture. He said, "I'm done. You can find someone else."
yeah. Name a movie that's had 5 different writers and different scripts that has been successful. Probably
Mm,
counted on one hand.
yeah,
It's not promising for Blade,
no,
to be
no.
honest with you.
No. Well, how
It's
long does it take to make a movie about a guy that kills vampires? Like, how many rewrites, how many situations? Because
Well,
I believe
because
David
they're
Goyer did it in one movie, right?
they're not trying to do one thing. They're trying
No.
to set up this whole other side of the Marvel universe, like the Black Knight and whatever other characters from Elementals that they want to put in, and they're, doing that whole, what was it, Midnight Suns?
Midnight.
Like trying to bring all of this together and set up a bunch of shit.
But see, that's what the Werewolf by Night, the one shot was. If you want to introduce certain characters, then experiment with a one shot, 53 minutes or however long, put a character in a situation, and then you can slowly roll that in. But to try to set that up in a movie, look, it's like they didn't do that even in the Avengers film. It took like 3 or 4 films for them to set up the Avengers. And they're trying to do this all from like they're worried about phases now. How do we set the next phase up instead
they
of
didn't
how do we write the characters in the best way?
they didn't do that with Moon Knight though, which was surprising.
Yeah, surprising.
Like it
Yeah.
didn't. I don't. There wasn't like a ties to a lot. It was just like focused on that specific character.
Hmm.
Probably the reason why it was actually enjoyable. Right?
Oh.
It had some opportunities, but
Hmm.
like comparative to the other
Well, they cut
garbage
it
that's
out.
recently hit.
I read something that said that they cut out all references to the rest of the Marvel
Oh,
universe
thank God!
just
Oh, who
so
made that
that
call?
you could
Huh?
enjoy it on its own and not have to be like, oh, now do I have to go watch something else?
Well, they fall into the same problem, just like the actual the Marvel comics itself. A lot of people are unwilling to jump into the books because, like, I remember when I, was like, 16, 17 years old, Chris Claremont was writing X-Men, and you would immediately pick up a book and it'd be like, the first page would be like, oh, if you want to know why Magneto does this, go read issue 175. And I'm like, it's 290. Like, where am I getting 175 from? And it's one of those things where it made it not as accessible. Well, the Marvel universe is now starting to get to the point where it's almost unacceptable, because there's people that all ask me all the time, and I'm sure Dr. Brentley, we talked about this. They're like, well, what movie do I start, watch, and how do I get involved and everything? And now we're at this phase. I'm like, oh, geez, maybe you got to start all the way from the beginning, to be honest with you, to understand most of this stuff. You know, it's just became to the point where it's not as accessible as it is. And I think that that's the major problem, and also how they did business. You know, the constant reshoots. Let's fix it in the post production stage and everything. We'll fix it through VR and everything. That's
Well,
like,
well, that's the interesting to me is the Variety article of, and we've
yeah,
seen it like the VFX post production. Like I would never anticipate that coming from a powerhouse like a Disney,
no, no,
Marvel. But then there's like, if you dive in deeper into like they've been rushed to
hmm
finish production, and that I think that outside of the writing, it's like some of the stuff is just like, ouch, this does not look like, this looks like a B movie.
hmm
Yeah, and the reason is because it was a last minute change.
hmm
They make these changes and because they can, right? It's like, hey, we're going to redo the entire third act of this. And that's why, oh, all of a sudden this fight scene that seems to come out of nowhere looks terrible. I
hmm
wonder why that is. Oh, they had 2 weeks to work on it before the premiere.
hmm
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you can also, that same article brought in the point about that one episode of She-Hulk that cost $25 million. One episode. That's a
And it was
whole
so bad.
entire season
It
on
wasn't
some
that
shows.
that was the series that people made the most fun of in terms
Oh,
of the VFX. Like
be,
it was really bad.
well, that looked like it was just a complete mess.
Yeah,
That and Secret Invasion. You can tell
Hmm.
it
all the
was
last
really
minute
bad.
stuff that was done in that, because the VR
Well,
really suffered in those
and
series.
She-Hulk was one of those ones where the first trailer came out and then they were like, "Oh no, but we're going to fix all the effects after that
Yeah.
because people said, "Well, that doesn't look like She-Hulk."
Mhm.
And so they had to go back and fix it all. So again, they're spending a ton of money on stuff that they already did cuz they didn't do it right the first time.
Mhm.
So outside of Disney and Marvel, I know. Again, I'm a big Spawn fan. You think this movie, and with Jamie Foxx attached to it, and then you've got Mr. Hawkeye attached to it, McFarlane's oversight. You think there's any hope for this movie to inevitably made, and then will it be any good? Or
I Good wise, I think if they start from a point, it could be good. I don't know if you're going to see these two actors ever make it to the screen, because Jeremy Renner, God bless him, had a horrific accident, and I just don't see him recover, because we haven't seen him for a while. And Jamie Foxx is not in the best also physical health either. I don't know if we can see both of those actors in a role. I have a feeling that they may be recasted. But I think now that because obviously, McFarlane, he's an ego guy, and you give him credit. His ego was bruised the script that he came in, and he said, "I'm going to do Jaws and everything. It's going to be 15 minutes. Spawn's only going to be in like the last act of like 15 minutes." And the executives was like, "No, that's not good. You need to find writers to come in and do this." So I think that there'll be a concentrated effort on making the script better, because they're seeing the superhero fatigue, if that's a thing. That's starting to pop in right now. So I think they've and Jason Blum's like, now this might be the one film where he'd been like, cheap is not better, because you're gonna need good VR effects for this movie. You're gonna definitely need good acting, because people don't know the property as much as it is. So I have hope that the story and I think the special effects and the money that we spent is, I just don't think the two main actors they have in it right now, I don't know if we're going to see those two actors take it to the screen.
Well, the good thing about Spawn is that Jamie Foxx is only going to have to do the voice about 95% of the time. And,
Huh.
5% of the time, he's Al Simmons before he gets burned up. And, that's it. So it's going to be a mask. He's going to be sitting on his ass in a VO booth. And that's going to be the show. There's going to be some other actor inside of the suit doing all of the work.
Well,
Well, there
actually,
was
if
a
we even see a suit, man, that might just be an actual CGI effect.
Yeah, they could do
Well,
that, but
well, I was confused on what Jeremy Renner was going to who he was going to play.
Oh, he was going to play. I think at one point they
Twitch,
say
police.
Twitch.
but that
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah. Without
I don't
Sam
see
in
the
it,
fit. I don't see the fit. Well, there was talks of Sam and Twitch TV
yeah, it
series
was.
that they were going to do as well,
Hmm.
which I think would be kind of cool if they did. So, okay, well, we'll see. I hope we get something better than the original. I think it deserves it.
You and
Again,
McFarlane both, man.
the HBO series was so great.
It
You had
was.
high hopes for the movie,
Hmm.
didn't do what we expected. So we shall see. But um, I'm looking for the next great superhero film. And
Hmm.
will it be a Marvel one? Will it be a DC one? Or will it be like an independent that blows us away? Time will tell. But if you had to bet today, where's it coming from? Marvel, DC, or will it be like a surprise independent?
Hmm. You
You
want to
putting
take
any
this
bets on
first,
it?
Doctor
The
Brindley?
next best superhero movie is not going to be from Marvel or DC.
Wow.
I really think
Wow.
that because now there's all these other companies that want
Yeah.
into this game, they're going to actually be looking for a good story, good characters, a if interesting situation. And there's plenty of independent comic books and weird ass ideas that, for almost 100 years now that's been going on. So there's something out there. And if you do it right, you can create a sensation.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's going to be with these characters that people have seen before from the people that do them the same way they've always done them before.
Well, right now I'll give a chance to have my the editor drop on my DraftKings predictions right here from. Hopefully, one day a sponsor DraftKings. But I would say most definitely, I think it's an independent. I heard that there's a new version of Hellboy they're trying to work out. They are purchasing a couple of more independent characters. I do think an independent is going to probably be the next hit because I think people are kind of like they've seen these characters, Superman, Batman, the Avengers. We've kind of seen them. And even with the newer characters they're introducing, it still has to feel of the same. But I think that they're going to look for something outside the norm, and I do think it'll be an independent character as well, man.
Yeah, the way that these superhero movie has gone, right? You started with just the individual characters,
Hmm.
Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and then they started to do the teams, X-Men, but it wasn't really until Justice League and Avengers
Hmm.
that we got the whole team up, and that was the next phase that people were looking for. So now there's something beyond the team up because we've seen that a million times now. We've seen it even from different universes from Marvel. So there's some other thing that's out there that's going to be the next phase of comic book movies, and it ain't coming from the corporate people.
Well, remember, and when the initial stage was starting up, and you had certain films, and then you had a 300 drop in. And when people said, "Oh, I was telling people, oh, that's from a comic book," people was like, "No, it's not. It is from a comic book." And so you're going to see different variations, and I think there's a lot of mature material and certain things that are completely different that you're going to be able to drop in, and I think that's actually going to help and revitalize the superhero side of it
Yeah.
because you'll give a better variety than what we've been seeing lately.
Yeah, all that Vertigo line, but DC won't use them.
Well, hey, there's a Sandman series on Netflix that's pretty good, man. So they're using it. It's just that I don't know about the big screen, but I think it's got to come from fresher ideas and, like I said, like a Spawn. If you do Spawn right, it's gonna reignite something because Spawn's not exactly like the other characters. Well, if you get in Hellboy or any of these other characters is out here, you're probably gonna get that. So hopefully we can see something that excite people again.
I think if a big studio is going to succeed, like a Marvel or a DC, it's probably going to be a movie with low expectations that has characters that maybe are not as popular.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading that they were banking on Marvel was going to release the Thunderbolts movie, but maybe that's being canceled. But
Mm-hmm.
something like that, where you have some of these characters you kind of know, but you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to like Guardians of the Galaxy that came out, where like unless you were an avid comic book reader,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't really know, and so people it was kind of a surprise. So
Actually,
I think if anything, it'll be one of those. It definitely, I agree, it's not going to be the big
no,
characters
you know what?
like you.
Actually, I'd like to have my sports book DraftKings thing changed.
Yeah.
Actually, it will be
I'm
Marvel.
sorry, sir.
no,
You've
no,
already
no.
placed
The
your bets.
final
What
bet
are
hasn't
you
been.
banking on Marvel? Who are
I'm
you
These are
banking
banking on
Vegas
on
Marvel
rules.
then?
the next Deadpool movie when it with Hugh Jackman in it. I think that will be
But
huge.
what studio is that?
That's going to be Marvel. That's going to be Marvel
But
Studios.
who is it?
Yeah,
Just is
Disney.
this Mar?
It went back to
It's
Disney.
going
It's
to be
still
a Disney
Disney.
R-rated movie.
And Deadpool will be in the Marvel universe. But
Yeah, you
I
might be
started
right
thinking
there.
about that. I
You
said,
might be right.
you're going to
See,
get
I
Hugh
didn't think of that
Jackman
as
in that
Disney
suit. Yeah.
because right, like wasn't it
It was
the
20,
original
20 of
20th Century
Century
Fox, right?
Fox, but then
Yeah.
they purchased everything over and
Mm.
they got the rights back. But I started thinking because I just saw footage of Hugh Jackman in the classic Wolverine suit. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, that's probably going to reignite the fans. So,
Well, it only took them, 20 some years, right?
yeah,
Because they've
exactly.
been asking for it since the first movie.
But
Well,
don't underestimate the power of the Disney executives to say we're scrapping this and redo the visual effects. And next thing you know, Hugh Jackman has a CGI suit
Yep.
versus just like
No.
why
He's
wouldn't
got
you
to be
wear
in
it?
black leather. Put that back on. And what is this?
Exactly.
Can we de-age him too? Let's de-age the whole film. We want Hugh Jackman in the original X-Men series. Yeah, I don't know. If that's where you're placing your bets, I hope, but I'm not. I'm not banking on that. I think it's going to be. It'll be a surprise because we have high hopes for that.
Yes,
But
we
anything
do.
with high hopes has not really delivered recently.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
surprised you didn't say Aquaman. I know you were all very excited about that.
No.
That movie.
no. I think Aquaman, like the sea, is going to be sunk.
Well, I don't think it's possible to fail harder than The Flash, but
Oh.
Aquaman 2 is going to find out.
Well, wait a minute. We haven't seen the Marvels yet either because that's not tracking well either. So,
Actually,
yeah.
it's up to like 75 to 80 for the opening weekend, which is a respectable number. It's not great. It's not. I think the first one opened to like 145 or something.
No, it was
So-
$1 billion first film.
If you told me 10 years ago
Yeah.
that a fake ass Chuck E. Cheese Five Nights at Freddy would beat Captain Marvel movie, I would have slapped you in the face. But here we go. Man,
Well,
times have changed.
And
Listen,
one cost 20 million to make, and one cost like 200 million to make.
Times have
Hold on,
changed.
I did watch Five Nights at Freddy on Peacock.
It's actually
And actually, it
it's
wasn't that
not
bad. It wasn't that
It's not
bad. It
It's
wasn't
not
that bad. Now,
You know why? You know why, Mr. Storm?
Because you saw
low
the
expectations.
No, because you
low
saw that.
expectations.
Did you see the Nicolas Cage version about a year ago that he made?
Oh no!
It's the same movie, man.
Willy's
It's the same
Wonderland.
film. Yeah, exactly. It's the same
no.
movie.
I
Now,
don't-
once you see
I'll shop the
Willy's-
bargain bins at Walmart,
And also,
because I know that's where those DVDs end up.
also the Banana Splits movie was the
Exactly.
exact same
Exactly.
concept.
But Five Nights, once you saw, because the Nicolas Cage one was, whoa, man. Whoa. That was
Well,
really
I would have
bad.
never thought
But-
that it would beat. You know,
I had to watch it because I was like, man, what is this movie's doing pretty well? Let me watch it. And I watched it on Peacock. I was like, look, it's you're not gonna get some sophisticated education from it, but it does it hit all the right buttons. And do you just sit there and say this is not as stupid as I thought it was? Yeah, absolutely, it's right up there, man. So, but unfortunately for the Marvels, just in the trailers alone, it looks just not well, and you're like, I can't see myself wanting to see this. I'm not excited
And-
about this.
You know what I noticed in the commercials now is they're pushing Sam Jackson.
Oh,
who's
yes.
probably like in 5 minutes of the movie, but they're using all 5 minutes in the advertising.
Well, Sam
because-
Jackson and the cat.
Yeah, it's like, please see this movie. Well, we've got a cat. We've got Sam Jackson. What else did you like?
What was the
Oh,
movie with Steven Seagal and where he died in the first 5 minutes of the film?
oh
That
no,
they
Executive decision.
decision.
Yes, that was an executive decision.
Exactly.
They said we got to make some box office, throw Steven Seagal on the poster, and kill him off in the first
Hey,
10 minutes.
I don't know what theater you saw it in or if you did,
Yeah,
but mine, people started clapping. It's like, yeah. I was like, fuck this guy.
I just can't believe that happened. I've never seen anything
I
so
know.
blatant,
That's like,
like where it's like he is part of the movie, and it was like he was a cameo. It's so
yeah.
funny.
And they
Yeah.
did. That was the best, I guess, reveal that I've ever seen in films. Because I thought it was like, well, it's Steven Seagal and it's Kurt Russell, and then you were like, well, wait a minute, something's here on that. So now every time we see something where it's odd like that, I'm gonna start thinking it's executive decision now. That would be the new term for it now.
But that
Speak.
was definitely the best, like
Yes.
pull the rug from
Mhm.
reveal for any movie ever. Just because there were probably a lot of people that went in going to see a Steven Seagal movie, and
Mhm.
then were pissed for
Oh
the
yeah.
next hour and 50 minutes.
That's like the three
Yeah.
people that walked in the theater.
Well,
Yeah.
true.
I think before we move on, I just have to say one thing about executives and Marvel and DC. What do you? I'm trying to understand. Do you think there a bunch of executives were in a room at Warner Brothers and they were like, "We've got." They had all these characters up on the board, all the DC character in the universe, and they were like, "Okay, what's the next film? All the characters. What's the next film we're making?" Who said Blue Beetle and how did that go? Who all said that was going to be the best decision? Because if I think about that's kind of slid under the radar.
It did.
I know that the Flash has taken a lot of flack and Black Adam.
Mhm.
That Blue Beetle movie,
Yeah.
Okay,
I
look,
it's
I will
so bad.
defend an executive decision
I can't not
right
believe you're
here
defending Blue
because
Beetle, ladies
you,
and gentlemen. Dr. Brantley's defending Blue Beetle.
yes. Now, if you're an executive at Warner Brothers, you're like, all right, we've got all these characters, but we can do this one who is a Latino character. Ding! That's one box. And he is going to fight a female bad guy. Ding! That's another box. And it's going to be much cheaper than any Batman or Superman movie. Ding, 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 ding. All these boxes are being checked in the executive's office, and so they're like, this is fantastic. It's going to cost at least 100 million less than a Batman, probably 200 less than a Batman. And we're going to get we can say it's a comic book movie from DC, and it depends on how they do the character and the actual movie itself. And they fucked all that up, but they tried.
Well,
You think any? You
this
think
when they
anybody in
hit
the
box
room was
office.
like, "Who the fuck is Blue Beetle?"
Oh
Well,
yeah,
no, all of them were like,
yeah, they
no,
did.
that's
Yeah,
one of our characters.
yeah.
Yeah,
It was
like
probably the research guy that they brought in that day. They had to explain it to everybody. Like, oh, wait a minute, just like the archivist, they brought him up and everything. Well, who is this Blue Beetle? He's like, well, he appeared in 19.
Well, doesn't he have that sidekick Kato? No, that's Green Hornet.
Yeah, no, that was a. I think it's they tried to hit the demographics and from the demographics, but see, this is the thing where I think when they do hit the demographics, they don't think about the whole general audience. They're hitting demographics and they're saying, well, how is everyone going to enjoy this film? And I think that's where they lost it because you really did the demographic for a very small number of the movie going audience. And it's the same thing that the argument can be made for the Black Panther. Like everyone's like, well, it's like it was they thought it was going to be for a small demo, but they had the machine of actually Marvel Entertainment or Marvel Studios where they had successful film as successful film, and the Black Panther was a bigger character. The Black Panther is not a secondary character in Marvel, but Blue Beetles, I think, no, this version of the Blue Beetles,
He's
a
not even a
third, fourth, or
secondary
fifth,
character.
yeah, and I think that's a demographical change, and I think that's what hurt it. And the shame of it is that it Blue Beetle might have benefited from a cameo in another film, and then you launched his own film. I think that probably would have helped the character a little bit more.
I thought the Blue Beetle was Herbie the Love Bug's nemesis when I first heard it, but
Yeah.
apparently not. So executives making decisions, and here we are back with remakes. Mr.
Mm.
Storm, I know you saw an interesting trailer from a
Yeah.
beloved favorite of the '80s.
Yeah. They're
What's your
destroying
take?
her
I'm the
childhood.
unknown stunt man that makes Eastwood look so fine. Yeah.
Lee Major's classic, the Fall Guy, and actually, we don't think about this enough, but Lee Majors had two very successful television shows. That rarely ever happens in Hollywood, but
Him and William Shatner.
yeah,
Wasn't Brad Pitt's character in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood kind of, I mean, a stunt
yeah,
guy? Like, I kind of felt like it was a little bit like the Fall Guy in some, I don't know, it just gave me that vibe a
I'm
bit.
I'm sure Glenn A. Larson took the Colt Seavers, the character from the Fall Guy, and I'm sure that was an amalgamation of a bunch of different stunt guys he saw. So because I know the character inside Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was based off of an actual real stunt man, so I'm sure that Colt was probably an amalgam of a bunch of different
Well,
stunt men, but. It
and
was
in
a
the
very entertaining show for, I believe, 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 4.
but
You
in the
know,
late '70s, that's when the stuntmen became big because it
hmm
was Hooper,
hmm
Burt Reynolds movie where they play stuntmen, and all those crazy stunt movies that they started doing.
Well,
They
didn't they
really
also
played up.
have like a stuntman challenge or something for television? It was like some kind of competition,
I
if I'm
think
not
so.
mistaken. Yeah, I think it was in the '80s or something. So I know, and
Sign
then
this waiver before we go forward.
and then I remember there was a show called That's Incredible, and my actual older cousin did a stunt on that show. So I remember it was yeah.
Good evening, I'm John Davidson. You'll be meeting these men. They're the world's most incredible talkers.
I'm Kathy Lee Crosby. This is Jim Bullet Bailey. He'll be dragged down the track while holding on to this metal sled to over 160 miles an hour.
I'm Fran Tarkenton. Weeks ago, we showed you exclusive footage of the heroic rescue operation performed by the Air Force at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. You'll meet some of the men who flew that courageous mission.
On tonight's edition of
That's Incredible.
You have to say what's the stunt. What happened?
He jumped off a building. Jumped off. I think it
That's
was
not
like
really a stunt. That's
oh, it
just a
was
stupid.
yeah, but he was.
And then he became the Miami Vice Universal Studios stunt show captain.
Well, he was always a stunt double, and he did That's Incredible, and then he appeared in several Carl Weathers movies as his stunt double. So
Okay,
and
that's
Action
cool.
Jackson.
and he also had a dojo in Los Angeles. So he was a strange family member. I will tell you that.
That sounds like the baddest ass family member. What are you talking about?
Did they ever remake Action Jackson? By the way,
No, they not,
No,
but
they need
they
to.
should. They should.
that's better.
That's
than
one
the
of the
Fall
things that
Guy.
we've been trying to get off the ground.
Oh, really, Action Jackson? Who would
But
play Action Jackson now?
I
I'm trying
don't know. That is one for the ages. But we have Ryan Gosling as Colt Seavers this time.
I mean, at least you got a star there. You know,
You
like,
do a star that's used more for not talking than talking, but yeah.
that's Ken, man. What are you talking about? That's Ken from Ken and Barbie.
Yeah, and now
Come
he's an
on.
action dude. I just think like we were talking before the cast, and I know that Dr. Brenton and I were going over this, but I was like, dude, does any of these writers ever watch the original show? Because like he was a stuntman and a bodyguard, and the way they just set these remakes up sometimes, it's like they just take the title alone and a couple of key elements, and then do something. You've already got a piped in order. It's like having Knight Rider and not having Kit. It's like, well, he doesn't need a car. It's they constantly do this. They'll take a beloved item, and we were saying, like, how do you do a remake right? The last Battlestar Galactica, they changed some characters around gender wise and everything, but it was still essence Battlestar Galactica, just with better visual effects and better acting. This is not.
Yeah.
This is just like, they just ram of a concept and let's throw an 80s name on it.
See, I actually liked the trailer. I thought it was well done. I thought it looks like it's going to be a fun movie. Now, whether it's faithful to the TV show, probably not.
Probably
you
not,
know,
no.
but if it's going to be a fun action movie with a stuntman as the main character, I think it could work very well. So I'm gonna be interested in seeing it, and it made me laugh. I liked what I saw.
There were some funny moments. I'm just saying, it's like the essence of what the show was, and some of the situations. It's
Yeah,
like,
he's
look,
not a bounty
Colt,
hunter.
Colt Seavers was like, he was a tough dude. He wasn't like, basically Ryan Gosling is playing like a clown, basically. And I'm like, it's like you just the essence of the show. And like the only thing they did was they got the truck. They brought the truck back, updated
Well,
a little bit, but they brought the
see,
truck back.
because I think the way that the characterization is going to be is how they ended the trailer, where he orders a giant martini and then he sticks his fist in it because it's got all the ice, and he's that kind of character, and I think it's going to be fun. Now, if you're looking for slavish devotion to a early 80s TV show, that's not going to happen here.
Well, the same way. This is the second time I've seen this when they had Mark Wahlberg and Spencer for Hire, and I was like, "My God, what did they do to this?"
Well, you remember V? They tried to bring
Yes.
back the series V,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and
they
they did all right initially, and then it kind
Yeah.
of fell apart.
No, it was
Yeah.
like that first couple of episodes were great, and then I
Yeah.
think it was the second season. It was like, well, what are you doing? But that was the
Yeah.
same thing with V. Like the first two movies were good, and then they tried to do a TV show, and it went to hell.
I'm just waiting for the T.J. Hooker film. I mean, that's what I'm really
Waiting
excited
for that,
about.
but they'll probably make a drama out of that.
Yeah. What about speaking of 1980s TV series? Did they ever do the Greatest American Hero reboot?
Several times, but I heard there was supposed to be one in production.
Did they
again.
actually release it though? I don't remember it ever coming out. Did
There
they?
was a pilot in, like, I think the mid '80s. It was the Greatest American Hero. I think it was Heroine, and it was it was the actual female
Female
character
version.
that took over. And I heard that that's
Right.
what they were trying to do to the updated version, bringing it back. So it was
Huh.
in development somewhere.
William Cat is really hoping that happens.
Oh, yes.
There ain't much else on his plate.
Hey, he doesn't have a flavor rave like anybody else, so he needs.
Well, I will say if Chet Maddox was on this call today, he'd really recommend that they reboot Alf.
Yes.
So
As
I don't know if
CGI Elf, that would probably look pretty good now.
I wouldn't doubt it, to be honest with you. I'm actually DraftKings or sportsbook thing on my thing. In the next 5 years, Alf will be in production.
Well, and then we have to take bets on if it's going to be a puppet or CGI.
That would be CGI, brother. This
Oh,
CGI.
now see, I think the close-up's got to be a puppet.
Mm-mm.
And
It'll
I
be
want it
just
to be
like
a
Yoda.
puppet from the 80s. Like bring I
Yes.
want it to be
No,
like-
they have to hide it behind
Yes.
couches and everything, and then have a little person inside of a full-size suit.
Oh yeah, I want the full Kermit the Frog experience. And if they do it, I'm watching. But if it's CGI, I'm not interested. I mean,
No,
if
what's
you're
the
gonna do
point?
it, you do it right. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's so funny, so funny. Like, there's so many again, and I think I'm excited to talk about this maybe next week about the lack of just creativity in the industry, and that there's so many fresh ideas out there that are not being utilized to reboot series from the 80s and all the junk that we're talking about. There's good stuff, don't get me wrong. We're not bashing the industry entirely, but I'll be honest with you. I'll go through Netflix in an evening, and it's hard to find like
Mm.
a good TV series, and it shouldn't be that way. And I'll start something, and 2 episodes in, I'm like, I can't do it. So maybe the audience has changed, and we're not evolving, but box office tells you otherwise.
Well, I mean, how is it that when we were growing up, there were three or then four stations, and usually there was only four things to pick from every night at any certain
Mm-hmm.
time, but there was usually something good somewhere, and that was usually a good for all week.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now, yeah, you're going through. It's like I've got this endless list of shows, not even from this country, and still nothing looks interesting.
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
like it's the quality over quantity, and now we've moved from like when you were the three or four networks, you better had quality because you couldn't afford not to. But now,
Yeah.
when you have so much quantity, you're trying to make so many cues.
Well,
You've got to start throwing more and more, and maybe hey, something throw it against the wall, maybe it sticks.
a
And so a
network
lot of
will
these
cancel
shows are
you after
coming.
two shows.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, back in the old days, they didn't. They actually may let you play out for a season, but now it's like there's so much competition. There's so many streamers, and if you don't have fresh material, then people aren't paying that subscription fee per month. So it's changed how we, just like in with the writer strike and the actor strike, it's changed everything streaming of how we view television. And I can tell you, it's been rare that I have went back and watched this series a second time now. It used to be I could have watched the series two or three times and I'd be like, all right, I'll rewatch it again. I don't really rewatch anything anymore. It's like I watch it once and it's like it's just so much endless stuff that I don't have time to go back to it.
Yep. Yep. Crazy times.
Oh yeah, brother.
And now Disney is going to take full control of Hulu.
Mm.
What that's going to mean. Netflix is like $70 a month now, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like literally like 25 or it's going to be 27.
Jesus.
Like I'm not paying that. I'm
No,
sorry.
no.
The whole
Well,
I'm not
point
paying that.
of cutting the cord was to not pay a
as
100
much as
plus
cable.
cable bill, but now all the individual things that you have is much more than $100 a month. So it's
Hmm.
like, what are you doing?
Well, the plus and the minus from Disney taking it over is just one less streamer that you have. So you've because they're going to combine Disney and Hulu into one, like the same way they did with HBO and the Max and the rest of
Mm-hmm.
the crap they combine. So there'll be one less streamer. But the problem of it is, it's the exact same way like the Max. Hulu's material doesn't fit with Disney Plus's, and just like with Discovery and HBO, none of that stuff, all the reality shows, that is like the Max is like one of the worst services to
Yeah.
purchase because there's 90% reality shows and you
Well,
got to dig through all this stuff in order to find like the regular shows.
what are they going to do? Like the real Game of Thrones. Dun, 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 dun. This is where dragons come from. No.
Exactly. No, I think that at least there's one less streamer that gets whittled down. So I think that's going to be helpful. But I don't know how they make this work because there are like I know that we'll talk about this a little later, but there's one series that we'll talk about the trailer popping up that's going to be on the same simultaneously. It's going to be on Disney Plus and Hulu at the same time, and I'm saying like that just doesn't make any sense to have it other than them looking for maybe a broader audience that they know they might not get at Disney Plus. Maybe they might get at Hulu. But if it wasn't good enough for Disney Plus, you should just dropped it on Hulu then.
Well, so we are moving on to Echo
Mm.
trailer that released, and I will say that it was very bloody and violent for a Disney show. And I was surprised because they show somebody put a gun up to somebody's cheek and shoot.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, okay, this is not a typical Disney show.
Well, this is the first Disney show that is TVM. It's for mature audiences, so I think that's why. But also, let's be honest, they tried so long to be like Disney Plus is a wholesome channel and there's not a lot of curse words. And then they got the Marvel stuff, and people wanted to see the Marvel Netflix shows. and or it's going to be in a special section. And I think now they're looking at what Max and Netflix is able to put on, and they're noting that their channel's a little watered down. So
Well,
I
and they
think
also
that's why
have
they're doing it.
all the Fox stuff now too.
Hmm.
So that is not all PG. They got PG-13 and R-rated stuff that is people want to see. So it's going to be on Disney Plus, which is the only thing they have to offer it to people, and they have to put up the little warning thing. But it's
But like
they.
Chris was saying, most definitely there will be a price hike. There's already
Yeah.
been one. But most definitely, when the two channels combine, it will most definitely be a price hike.
And they're doing the Daredevil Born Again, which is rated R too, right?
No,
The series, because they're bringing I
you
think
would
they're
think they
bringing the
would.
pun. Well, Frank Castle's going to be in it. How do you not make it rated R? Like, what do
True,
you?
true,
The,
true. Yeah,
and
they're
then it
gonna
could
have
be.
to. They're seeing the success that they had with the Netflix shows, and I think that Disney's like, look, we have to, because the Falcon, the Winter Soldier, Loki, the rest of they cut the thin line, but they never really go over it. But they're gonna need material that's gonna have to go over it now. You
Yep.
know.
Yep. For sure.
And I think what Echo's premiering in January 10th. So like they're already bypassing like whatever they're gonna put out for Christmas. And they're putting their hopes and dreams on like January 10th. And they're like, and they're doing something that they hadn't done, and this is the Netflix phenomenon. Every episode will be dropped the same day. Now, normally they haven't done that. They've actually bolted against doing that. But so that's two things that we can see. Either they don't like Echo series, and I heard there was little rumblings in the background, and they just want to get it out and get it over with, or they're trying a new format, and they're trying to see if people will adapt to it.
Well, they know that once people, they're not going to come back next week, much
Hmm.
less 5 weeks or 6 weeks later. They're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, no, we got to put this out now, and if you want to binge it, go ahead." I think they're just trying to dust it off their shelf
Well,
and move on to the next thing.
I think what happened was like you guys are watching Loki, right?
I actually haven't watched it since the second
I
episode.
watched the second episode and I haven't been able to watch it, and I think they're seeing those numbers that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I plan to go back and watch it. It's just that there's been so many other things to
Not right
do
now.
that I haven't had the time. But it wasn't like the Asuka series where it was like, all right, I have to see this because it sets up such a vital character. But this time around, I was like, I liked the Loki first season. The second season, it didn't start off in the same exact way. I thought it was a little slow on certain aspects, and there was a lot of product placement that was added in that knocked the integrity of certain things down. And I think they're seeing the numbers drop off, and I think that's
Well,
why they're jumping to this format.
I don't know what you're talking about with the product placement. Maybe you deserve a break today, Mr. Storm.
I will say that I think people understand that this version of the MCU could be a dead end. And so I think why watch a series where you're investing in, again, like, do you care about Kang? I mean,
Yeah,
he's
true.
episode 1 of the new series, like he's pretty prevalent, and like you're starting to, if you're hearing rumblings that that's going to go away, there's no like emotional investment. I think people are like, I don't care. So it's either you got to build a franchise or a universe or a villain, going back to the start of the cast, that people actually care,
Hmm.
or you reboot it, you scrap it, which is stupid, but it may be the only solution. Because right now, anything attached to this whole, they're going to make a King Dynasty. Does anybody care?
Hmm.
Do you
Well,
care? I don't care.
ask
And I
yourself,
think that's a problem.
Chris, do you think that the Quantum that whole
No.
release of that film, do you think that murdered the Loki series second season?
Yes. I
It
think
did.
that movie killed
I think it did.
the whole
Hmm.
that the villain.
I think it did.
And yeah, I
Mhm.
And
think
wasn't the after credits stinger like a setup of a scene from the Loki show?
Was.
And yet what he was
yes.
like in the old timey outfit or
Mhm.
Yeah.
whatever. And it's like, okay, so now I have to watch this show to understand what's happening with this thing going over. And
I think
people
Chris hit
get
it on
sick
the
of it.
head. I think the villain was so underwhelming
Yeah.
that I think it hurt this whole
Yeah.
entire phase.
Why do I want to watch Loki? I didn't like the guy in this movie.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, I think the last thing I just wanted to float out there is: are you all excited for House of the Dragon coming back soon? Um, I know it's not exactly Game of Thrones. I'm waiting for if they'll ever do the Jon Snow series. But I thought House of the Dragon was pretty good.
It,
The
it
first season.
it was a good sequel to the series. I think the initial Game of Thrones ended very terribly for everyone, and I thought House of the Dragon picked it up a little bit. Look, they had one heck of an ending to the first season, and I will not spoil. There's no spoiler alert needed for this one, but I thought they ended the first season extremely well for the anticipation of the second season.
Hmm.
And so I think they set up some storylines, and we've got some fighting and some things that we're really gonna jump into it. So I think, yeah, and I think that due to House of the Dragon's success, that will lead into a Jon Snow because I see this in a lot of areas on the internet. People are like, they really want that Jon Snow, and I think this has actually helped it. So I do think we'll see it. It's just the way they're doing these shows. Like I hadn't really even thought about it. They said, well, 2 years since the show premiered, and I really had to think about that. And I was like, has it been that long? It's just taking, I think, a lot longer to get these series to air, and I don't know people's attention span. Like, look, I'm probably not going to go back and rewatch any of the first season. So hopefully they got one heck of a good recap.
Yeah, I actually only got, I think, into the third episode of
Oh,
that series before I canceled my Max membership because there was no reason to keep it on. So I never got to that far, but it's interesting to hear that it ended well
it
on that
did.
first season. So I might go back.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's blown. But no, it actually did. It set up things for the second season extremely well, and there's a lead up to it where it's increased the pressure of stuff. So you're kind of interesting to see because there's the series did because again, like we were talking when it first started, there was like so much in the level of, I guess, government and everything that was involved. And it
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, this is the person land to see. So the first two episodes, you're like, what the heck is this? It's like a political House of the Dragon show. Like, what is this? And then it got beyond that. And then it got to the rivalries and everything else. And then the show started going into the Game of Thrones kind of scenario. So I hopefully this second season, they just run into the action and go. So, but the summer 2024, we'll have to see, man, because I haven't seen any of the Hollywood slate. I know they've moved a bunch of films, so uh, that might sit alone as one of the main things for the summer that people can watch, man.
Yep. Well, any last thoughts before we wrap this episode? I know we got to talk about our amazing sponsor, but any final thoughts of Marvel and best villains or anything else we missed this evening?
No,
Well,
well, we're
if you
always going to
couldn't
miss a villain.
tell, there's the best villain is Darth Vader.
Circle is now complete.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think that's. I don't think that's debatable, but I'm sure that the comment sections there might be somebody that might come up with a different character, but I think it's hard to press to find. But as we jump into things, as we always do, we thank our sponsor for the night, Toys versus Games, located in Wilmington, California. They are not the corporate store; they are a mom and pop store. That's the beautiful thing about them. They are always the type of individuals that look to serve the people that come to the store. They really care about the patrons. And we normally don't get that from Target. I know I've walked in Target. I know Chris has walked in Target. Dr. Brentley's ordered from Target, and we've heard those horrible nightmares. You're going to get a service that's rendered directly to you. You're going to feel like you're an individual instead of just some number. So if you're looking for a place to spend your money at and you want to get some good service, go to Toys versus Games and tell them that the Shadow Crew podcast sent you. It is Shadow's preferred store, so you may see him there as well doing some toy hunt.
And as always, some channel updates. So a couple of new videos hit the channel this week. Please, again, subscribe, like the video, share the video. It helps us grow the channel. But make sure you click the notification button because some of the things that hit the week, including this podcast, the Shadow Knows videos, um, and Chatmatic unboxing, some cool things Mr. Storm and Dr. Brantley do. If you haven't checked back the retrospective and some other new content that's going to be hit the channel. So again, we appreciate you all listening, subscribing, spread the word. We love doing it, and drop us a comment. We love to hear from all of you.
Yeah, hopefully Chet will be back next week, right? Or is he flying to
I
Asia
don't
or
know.
something? You
I don't know. He said he was buying like 1,200 pounds of GI Joe figures, and so he had to fly to Guatemala, where somebody who's been holding them since 1984 lives, and I think he's going to chopper them back to the U.S.
All
So
right.
I can't wait for the unboxing
I can't
video
wait
of
for those
1,200
either.
pounds of GI Joes.
Unfortunately, they're not attached to each other, so it's just random pieces,
Yeah,
arms
it's
and legs and
legs,
bodies.
arms, heads, weapons, tires.
So it's a project.
Yeah, but he'll be back next week, and again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch up with you all next week.